Rights, and some people seem to forget this, are not a gift. We didn't get them from God, and we didn't really get them from any government. We had to win them. But they were created, invented, as it were, by human beings on the basis that every human being is entitled to them. In essence, the belief that informs the claim that such rights that those rights exist is the notion that all people should be able to live with dignity. Liberty consists in the freedom to do everything which injures no one else, which of course is the subject of this evening's debate. If you kill someone, thus depriving them of the possibility of enjoying their human rights, indeed depriving them of their right to life, do you, the killer, as a result, deserve to lose your rights? Should terrorists have human rights?
It is precisely because I believe so strongly in lawfulness and a strong state that I believe on the one hand we should be party to the European Court of Justice, European Court of Human Rights, but also that we should chase terrorists with all the means at our proposal because they wish to take away the dignity of others. And of those people who have opted to go and fight for the so-called Islamic State, which has nothing to do with the peaceful religion of Islam, I say they have actually lost a key right, and that key right is their British citizenship.
A group of people within Northern Ireland felt that they couldn't, through the ballot box, exercise the power that some people in a gerrymandered state and so on, so they fought back through terrorism. Were they not justified?
No, absolutely not. And the British state was right to use all the means it had at its disposal in order to stop terrorism.
The IRA decided to a physical false response to the British state. Having heard what Anthony's had to say, do you think, and he doesn't believe terrorism can ever be justified, how would you react?
The first reaction would be to the usage of this word terrorism. It's a concept that defines nothing. It's a catch-all. Every incident around the world and movement, if you don't like it, it's a terrorist. And it's one of the great ironies of it, that from my perspective, I spent most of my adult life fighting terrorism, fighting the terrorism of the British state.
I agree with Pat. I think that it's a catch-all and it doesn't help. It's a bit like human rights. The two stand as nebulous ideas that can be deployed how people want. But when it comes to the systemic violence of the state, you know, it's always nice to hear somebody trotting out. A liberal democracy is like sort of saying hoogie, or sort of posting a picture of yourself with a kitten. It looks good. You just keep saying liberal democracy and everybody will think we're all nice. The state fundamentally constitutes itself as a monopoly on violence. That's what it exists for, right? And that's how it constitutes itself. So when any organisation constitutes itself as a monopoly on violence, it's going to object to the deployment of violence in any context it doesn't control, and it's going to label it as terrorism if it sees fit. Do I think it is in any circumstances justified by a population within a state to take up arms against that state? Yes, of course it can be.
On the whole, terrorism is the recourse of last resort for people who have no other voice.
I can understand you fight back against the state. That would be a natural thing to do. But why then do you reach out beyond the state and decide to slaughter innocent people?
Why they would do it? Well, that's a branding exercise. That's to draw attention in a disproportionate way to their cause. And often it's justified on the basis that, well, here are a bunch of civilians in a country that they are from who have been killed. And let's say one of the examples of that, where one of the dangers of departing from human rights is exemplified in why ISIS dress up their prisoners before beheading in orange jumpsuits. They do that as a reference and not an owing to Abu Ghraib, where we, in the West, departed from human rights and basic human principles of treating people, then it's an eye for an eye scenario, it's an escalation scenario. And ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the other groups have always justified the targeting of civilians in other countries as a reaction to the targeting of civilians, often with a huge extra number of zeros involved, in their home countries.
The state could be accused of terrorism. If you think of Bloody Sunday as a perfect example, which now is not now a matter of dispute, even David Cameron felt it necessary to apologise for shooting 13 innocent people. So in those circumstances, is it not an example where the liberal democracy you got broke down and allowed the forces of the state to do something which was so reprehensible it was understandable to people engaged in terrorism?
But the fundamental point about liberal democracy is, first of all, that it is required to and judged by its adherence to the law. You just mentioned David Cameron apologising. I mean, I think I'm fed up with his apology.
That was 30 years later.
Okay, but 30 years later, but people, it is perfectly possible for a liberal democracy to make a mistake, but it does not cease to be a liberal democracy, and it is never an odious terrorist state. You said that the state has the monopoly of violence. The word violence is the key word there, it should be the state has the monopoly of force, not of violence.
Is there a difference between force and violence?
It's a bit like the freedom fighter terrorist distinction, isn't it? It depends where you're standing, whether something looks like force or violence. I would imagine if you were standing in Derry in the streets that day when the parachute regiment opened fire, you wouldn't have thought of it as force.
Yes, we made terrible mistakes in this country in the past, but fundamentally we believe in lawfulness and we believe in the dignity of human beings, and that dignity should not be taken from them by people who come in the night to blow them up, or people who think their violence is justified by dressing the people they're about to slash their throats in orange suits.
If you want to say that question is just fundamentally good, you can ask most people in India what they thought about that during occupation. You can ask everyone in Australia who were Aborigines. You can ask everyone in America who were Red Indians. Yeah, in terms of that genocidal wave that Britain unleashed on the world, I think that really doesn't really give us much hope for an inherent goodness in Britain, particularly when Tony Blair comes along and